Hi guys, I'm Gasha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times. Today I'm here with my first ever ranking video. I've always seen people doing videos ranking like directors' movies, actors' movies, franchises, and I've always wanted to jump on that wagon because I always have this feeling, maybe it's just me, but I have this feeling that I have kind of unpopular opinions when it comes to rankings. And I don't know why, but after I saw The Conjuring 3, I was compelled to do this video. I felt like I wanted to let you guys know what my ranking would be with this franchise, because I do feel that I have really different opinions when it comes to the Conjuring universe compared to other people. I also even asked you guys on Twitter if you would like to see this type of video series, and you all said yes, and so many people sent me like suggestions of which franchises to do, and I'm so thankful for you guys, for your support and for giving me ideas. And I'm definitely going to be continuing with this series. This is going to be the very first video, and I feel also the need to say here that these are just my completely subjective opinions on which movies are better.
It's coffee time!
We are going to jump straight into the Conjuring universe. If you're new here, if you love horror movies, horror TV shows, collectibles, please consider subscribing to the channel before you leave, and also hit the notification bell to join the coffee family. Also, currently my apartment is a living hell. I am in hell. The windows of my apartment have been taken out, and they have completely covered the windows so that there is no possibility of air coming in and out of my apartment. I also have no natural lighting whatsoever, so I hope the videos are still gonna be of a decent quality. So alright, you guys, let's start talking first of all about the Conjuring universe and how it came to be. The Conjuring universe is an American franchise that has created this universe of supernatural movies. This film series represents the real life story of Ed and Lorraine Warren that used to work on hunting cases. It doesn't matter if an object was hunted or a house was hunted by an evil spirit, they always tried to help families in need through the years. While the main three movies follow Ed and Lorraine Warren really closely as they work and solve their cases, we also have some spin-offs that are actually presenting us with some of those demonic entities that the Warrens have come across through the years. All the movies of the Conjuring universe take place between 1952 and 1981. The actual development of these movies happened actually 20 years before the first Conjuring movie even saw the light. Ed Warren himself played a tape of Lorraine Warren's original interview with Caroline Perron for a producer, Tony DeRosa Grant. DeRosa is the one that gave the project the title of The Conjuring, and he really fought hard for 14 years trying to get the movie made without any success. It wasn't until the Hayes brothers came across the screenplay that they decided to change the perspective and tell the story from Ed and Lorraine Warren's perspective instead of the Perron's family. Now, after that small introduction to the franchise and how it came to be what it is today, let's start with our ranking in number 8. And this is going to be an unpopular opinion because a lot of people have put this movie way higher on their ranking list, but for me, I have really no other choice than to put here Annabelle Comes Home. In this movie, Annabelle activates the haunted objects in the Warrens' artifact room. Annabelle Comes Home takes place after Annabelle and The Conjuring and focuses on the doll after she was kept in the glass box in the Warrens Museum. We follow Judy alone with her babysitter while her parents are away, and there is a guest in the house that by mistake gets into the artifact room, releasing Annabelle. Even though I absolutely love McKenna Grace and I thought she did such an amazing job here, and even though we do get to see here Patrick Wilson and Rhea Farmiga, we see them for like maybe 2 minutes between the beginning and the end of the movie, and even though the acting was good in this film, it just could not save it for me. This being the third Annabelle movie and this movie being officially R-rated, I was kind of hoping to see a little bit more of action in this movie. This for me just felt like a really watered down middle grade PG-13 movie. Now there is nothing wrong with a PG-13 movie. I myself have many favorites that are PG-13. However, the jump scares, everything was really predictable and nothing much happened in this movie. The part that I really enjoyed, apart from the acting, you know, was the artifacts room, because I love to discover and see a little bit more of every single object that was in the room. The movie takes place basically nearly the whole movie in the same house, and I don't feel like they really utilize every camera angle, every perspective, and it just felt boring at some point. I really got bored while watching this movie, which is not a good sign. I think part of that was also because the tension was nowhere to be found in this movie. I think at some point I understood that we're not gonna get anything really R-rated in the movie. It just felt like a middle grade, like more of a family kids friendly movie to me, and I understood that that was not exactly what I was expecting from this film. Fun fact here is that I saw somebody writing in a review that this movie had a decent amount of gore, and I was like, did we watch the same movie? In number 7, we have The Curse of La Llorona. This movie takes place in 1973, and even though this was set to be a standalone, there is a connection between the Conjuring universe and this movie, because we do see Father Perez at the end of the movie talking to the family about, you know, him having experiences with the supernatural, with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and talks about a doll, which we all know it's Annabelle, so there is a connection there. In Los Angeles, the legendary ghost of La Llorona is stalking the night and the children. Ignoring the warnings of a troubled mother, a social worker and her own kids are drawn into a frightening supernatural realm. Their only hope of surviving La Llorona's deadly wrath is a disillusioned priest who practices mysticism to keep evil at bay. Even though I loved that they brought a complete different story to the Conjuring universe, something that we had never seen or heard before in the Conjuring movies, and also even though I really enjoyed to get to know a little bit more about the folk tale of La Llorona, I felt like this movie relied way too much on jump scares. Even though I did enjoy to learn more about this legend of La Llorona and where it came from, and I also really enjoyed all the cultural references to Mexico, all the cultural things also when it comes to their religion and their beliefs, I just felt like this movie would have worked so much better when it comes to atmosphere and being realistic if it would have been completely done in Mexico. Even though the movie gave us a simple story and a lot of jump scares, it did what it had to do. It delivered. I don't think this was a bad movie per se, and I really like the way that La Llorona looks. In number 6, I have a movie that I know a lot of people really loved. I think it is a very decent movie, but for me, I would have to put it in number 6, and that is Annabelle Creation. In this movie, we follow the story of a former toy maker called Sam and his wife Esther. They lost their 7-year-old daughter Annabelle in a tragic car accident years ago. Now in 1955, they open their house to welcome a nun and 6 orphaned girls. One of the orphaned girls sneaks into a forbidden room to find there the doll Annabelle, and that is when basically all hell breaks loose. Now, this movie, in my opinion, what it did really well was the scares. There is a lot of different types of scares that this movie offers us, and some of them were really effective, and we also get some creepy images like finger bones snapping, things like that. I really appreciated those moments. I really enjoyed them. The plot, however, on the other hand, I felt like it was really thin, and it came to a point where we just hit a wall with the story. And you know, I can see why a lot of people really enjoyed this movie, because it has really good scares, and if you just want a horror movie that, you know, just offers you scares, then I can understand why this might be your favorite one. But when it comes to the plot development and the characters, I just felt like this one didn't really hit the mark for me, so that's why I had to put it in number 6. Let's go to what is probably the most controversial or unpopular opinion of them all, because in number 5 I have The Nun. This is a prequel following the story of the demonic nun that we got to know in The Conjuring 2, known as Valak. And she was one of my absolute favorite things of The Conjuring 2. I was always in love with this character. I think a lot of people fell in love with Annabelle really quickly, and for me it was with Valak. I just absolutely loved her, because this was a character that from the moment I saw her for the first time in The Conjuring 2 made me really uncomfortable, and that tension that she was able to build on screen was extreme for me. So I just always loved her for that, and I was really excited to get to know her origin story. The movie takes place in 1952 when a young nun at a cloistered abbey in Romania takes her own life. So a priest with a haunted past and a novice on the threshold of her final vows are sent by the Vatican to investigate. Together, they uncover the order's unholy secret, risking not only their lives but their faith and their very souls. And they will be confronted with a malevolent force in the form of a demonic nun. Now, this movie got really bad reviews, it got a bad reputation, and I don't believe that it deserves to be trashed so much, because there is one thing that this movie did really well, which is to build up and keep the tension from the beginning to the end. Now, this is a movie that is going to be slow, so most people, you know, might find it boring, but I really enjoyed the pacing of this movie. Another thing that comes with a movie like The Nun is that, of course, when you see Valak in The Conjuring 2, it's only a couple of minutes, and the effect that she has on you is very powerful. And when you are watching her origin story, of course, you see her one time, then another time, and at some point it can be that wow effect, you know, starts to disappear. But I just love the character so much. One thing that I really loved about The Nun is this gothic atmosphere in this castle with the nuns, and also the movie at times didn't feel like it was taking itself so seriously. So for some reason I kind of got reminded of the older Hammer films with this movie, and that really worked for me. But I could see why, you know, for some people this movie was a complete flop. And also I have a fetish, if you will, for movies that take really religious places or figures like nuns, and something that is supposed to be really pure and good, and then you put something really dark, nasty, evil in it. For some reason, it really works for me. Let's move on to number 4. We have here a movie that most people put at the bottom, but for me it made it to the halfway of the list, and that is Annabelle. This movie takes place in 1967, and it is the story before the Warrens come even in contact with the doll Annabelle. This is a spin-off movie that was released as the first spin-off of the franchise, and it was clear to, you know, the crew that made The Conjuring that they had to do an Annabelle movie, because everybody absolutely fell in love with Annabelle from the first movie, and I can see why. I also love movies about creepy dolls. The plot focused on John and Mia Form, a married couple expecting a child, whose vintage doll, Annabelle, becomes possessed by a vengeful spirit. For me, in this movie, I always say that less is more. I felt like this movie, yeah, it had less scares, but the scares were a lot more effective for me, and it goes a little bit back in time with those scares of what you cannot see in the dark, even though it does have a couple of jump scares. But there is specifically one scene for me that really brought it home, and that is the scene on the staircase. If you watch the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. It just gave me this movie gave me like Exorcist vibes and Rosemary's Baby vibes, and I just absolutely loved how this movie presented the horror. Now, I know this movie is problematic. It has flaws when it comes to the plot. I know the plot can be messy, but this is the one Annabelle movie that I would rewatch the most. And if you have been keeping count, you might have noticed that so far the list has not included any of the actual Conjuring movies. And that is because even though there are some spin-offs that I really enjoyed, I think like most everybody would agree that the Conjuring movies, the three of them, are on the top. Even though I know a lot of people have not been really enjoying my top three, and that is in number 3, The Conjuring 3. Based in 1981, this movie follows a trial when, for the first time, somebody accused of murder on first degree claimed to be innocent because he didn't remember what happened, as he was being possessed by a demonic entity. So we get to see Ed and Lorraine Warren confronted with this case with something completely new and different from what they've had to face so far. This is also the first Conjuring movie that was not directed by James Wan, and a lot of people have complained that that is the only reason why it didn't work, and I do not believe that is exactly why it was not as effective. I just think that the change of the concept, the change from having an exorcism in a haunted house and that being just the main thing, and moving the movie to a more detective investigation type of story is what bothered a lot of people. Even though this movie was not perfect, and even though I know it has less horror elements and scares than the other two Conjuring movies, I still felt like the combination between jump scares and also a little bit more elaborate scares really worked for me. Especially the exorcism scenes for me were amazing. Interesting enough, what didn't really work for me in this movie was the ending, because I thought it was a little bit more predictable and I didn't really like how they wrapped it up. But this is a movie that has a lot of heart, and we get to see a lot more of Ed and Lorraine Warren and their relationship, and I think a lot of us really love them as a couple on screen, and also the real Ed and Lorraine Warren and their story. So I was definitely there to hear more about them. I don't think this is a bad movie at all, so you know, I hope that you guys give it a try, even if some of the negative reviews have been scaring you into watching it, because it's still pretty good, and for me, in my humble opinion, better than any of the other spin-offs. And here is where my last unpopular opinion comes, because in number 2 I have The Conjuring. In 1970, paranormal investigators and demonologists Lorraine and Ed Warren are summoned to the home of Caroline and Roger Perron. They have 5 daughters, and they have recently moved into a secluded farmhouse where a supernatural presence has made itself known. As the manifestations of this presence escalate, the mother reaches out to Ed and Lorraine Warren and asks them for help. This movie was really successful because it brought back something that the movies had been missing the years prior, which is going back to the good old horror, to the amazing atmosphere, to that tension that really kept you at the edge of your seat. And this was one of those movies that was not showing but let you think what was hiding in the shadows. That was what was causing you to have this fear, to be in tension. And they did exorcism and haunted house in a more old school way that we had lost, and I think that that is why so many horror fans, including myself, fell in love with The Conjuring on the first place. I feel like also the fact that these movies in general are based on true events are making them more relatable because they are believable already to begin with, because we know that these things have been documented. You know, we know that Ed and Lorraine Warren, they did exist, and at the end of the movies you get to see snippets of the real story, and I think that also makes it even more intense. I think also one of the reasons why the Conjuring universe worked so well from the very first movie is from that decision that I told you at the beginning that the Hayes brothers did, which is to present the story from the point of view of Ed and Lorraine Warren, the people that were investigating the case. Most of these haunted house stories that we had seen, they were told from the perspective of the families, you know, that were moving into a new house and suddenly they realized there was a presence in the house and they had to fight against it. But now we had this kind of human side of the investigators going there to help the families, you know, kind of like being stronger together. Like, I don't know, this brought like a new fresh take, and that was such a smart decision. I think if we would have seen The Conjuring from the perspective only of the family and not had Ed and Lorraine Warren as the main characters, really, I don't know if it would have worked so well. And for me, in number one, because I do believe that it is superior, sue me if you don't have the same opinion, but I have The Conjuring 2. In 1977, paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren come out of a self-imposed sabbatical to travel to Enfield, a borough in North London. There they meet Peggy Hoxton, an overwhelmed single mother of 4 who tells the couple that something evil is in her home. There is a lot of discussion in this movie at the beginning if the daughter is faking it or if there's really a true evil spirit in this house. So Ed and Lorraine Warren, they decide to take the job and help this family because that is what they love to do, to help families in need. I guess also a reason why I really love this movie is because for me it was the one that had the most tension and horrors for me. This movie had Valak, the nun, and it had the Crooked Men, and those are 2 really creepy characters from the franchise that I absolutely loved. I fell in love with them the moment that I saw them in The Conjuring 2. In this movie, every scene had a purpose. Every angle was just perfect for that moment, and also it kind of captured the atmosphere of London. It kind of gave it a more gothic vibe, if you may, and I think that this movie worked so really well for me as well because we had so many different horror elements to the story. We had a possessed child, we have a demonic nun, we have the Crooked Men, we have these old man spirit. It was just a lot of things going on in that house, and there were horrors for everybody here. And even though this story was also based on true events, as all of the stories that we got to see from Ed and Lorraine Warren, all of their cases are based on true events, this one had also a lot of heart, and I really felt for this family. I really felt connected to them, and I really loved the acting from the main little girl that was possessed by the spirit. I just felt like she did such an amazing job. It just felt so real to me. So this was my ranking, but what is next for the franchise? We still don't know. Nothing has been confirmed as of yet. I know that in the past they did discuss a Nun 2, depending on how good the movie did. The movie The Nun is from 2018, if I'm correct. So I don't know if they're still gonna go that way because it's been some time and nothing has been confirmed. Also, the Crooked Man was something that was on the table at some point, and I am still hoping that that one is gonna happen because I just find the character of the Crooked Man so interesting, and we might be able to get a movie that ends with the word men that is actually good. Because most of them, you know, Slender Man, Bye Bye Man, not that great. And also, if you love the Conjuring universe in general and you are a comic lover, you are in luck because DC Comics announced that they were going to do a series called DC horror, and one of the things that they were going to do was a mini series based on the Conjuring universe. It is called The Conjuring the Lover, and it is a 5-issue comic that I believe was released on the 1st of June 2021. So if you are a comic fan and you also love The Conjuring as much as I do, you might want to also get your hands on those. Each of these issues is supposed to explore the background story of the artifacts that we can find in Ed and Lorraine's Warren room. So yeah, really excited for this one. I still have not gotten them myself or read them, but they're definitely on my list. Alright guys, I really hope that you enjoyed my first video ranking a franchise. I know we're gonna have completely different opinions, but that is okay. That's the fun of sharing our thoughts on movies in general. Let me know down below your own personal ranking of this franchise, and also if you have any other ones that you would really like me to rank for you guys, let's talk about it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. Please give the video a big thumbs up for support. Sharing is caring, and also I hope to see you all in the next coffee time. Bye.